Hello, good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for joining us. You're watching World Today. Before we begin, here's a brief look at today's top stories. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim has strongly condemned the killing of Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. He warned that the act could push West Asia into a period of grave and prolonged instability. Iran's news agency reported on Sunday that the country's former president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, was killed in an airstrike in Tehran. Ahmadinejad, 69, was killed at his home in eastern Tehran along with his bodyguard. Iran's Interim Leadership Council has been formed and begun its operation. Iranian President Mahmoud Pezeshkian said that the council will continue Ali Khamenei's path with strength, vowing that Iran's armed forces are ready to smash the bases of the enemies. US and Israeli forces carried out a missile attack on Gandhi Hospital in Tehran. Iranian news agencies reported that several parts of the hospital building suffered damage, while the medics and patients were seen fleeing from the building. So far, there had been no official confirmation on the number of casualties nor the extent of injuries reported. The U.S. military announced the first American casualties of President Donald Trump's intensifying attack on Iran. It said 3 U.S. troops were killed and another 5 were seriously wounded in operations against Iran. The United Arab Emirates has ordered its stock markets closed on Monday and Tuesday until further notice as the country reels from Iran's retaliatory missile and drone strikes in a sign of the growing economic disruption sweeping the Gulf. It said in a statement that the authority will continue to monitor developments in the region and assess the situation on an ongoing basis. Oil prices soared and stocks fell in Asia on the back of turmoil in West Asia after US and Israeli strikes on Iran, with the vital Strait of Hormuz effectively shut and several ships attacked. Gas prices are also expected to soar as Qatar is a key exporter of liquefied natural gas, heightening inflationary risks. Many people were killed across Pakistan as protesters outraged over the death of Iran's supreme leader took to the streets. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said the killing of Ali Khamenei was a violation of international law and Pakistan residents joined the people of Iran in their hour of grief. Ndiaga Diagne, the man suspected of fatally shooting at least 2 people and injuring 14 others at a bar in Austin, Texas, had a history of mental health issues, while the FBI was looking into a possible terrorism link. The gunman was killed in an exchange of fire with police at the scene and had left 3 people in critical condition. Arsenal kept their Premier League title destiny in their own hands as they eked out a nervy 2-1 derby win against Chelsea on Sunday, with their corner routines again coming to the rescue. Jurriën Timber's second half header ensured Arsenal restored their 5-point lead over Manchester City, who had upped the ante with victory over Leeds United the day before. And that was a brief look at today's major headlines. Stay tuned for the complete World Today Bulletin with full details. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim today presented a motion in the Dewan Rakyat condemning the Israel-United States attacks on Iran. The motion criticizes what he described as the barbaric and violent strikes by Israel with US backing and calls for strong condemnation of those actions. The Prime Minister said the continued military actions against the sovereign and independent state of Iran are contrary to internationally agreed principles. He added that the ongoing actions risk further escalation and could drag much of the Gulf region into war as a result of attacks initiated by Israel.
Tentunya sebagai negara bebas dan merdeka, Malaysia hanya mampu menyeru supaya gencatan senjata berlaku tanpa syarat, dengan serta-merta, dan kalaupun ada asas pertikaian, ia harus kembali ke meja rundingan secara konstruktif.
Dato' Sri Anwar Ibrahim also strongly condemned the killing of Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. He warned that the act could push West Asia into a period of grave and prolonged instability. He said the deliberate targeting of a head of state sets a dangerous precedent and weakens the norms and principles that underpin the international order. The Prime Minister also extended his condolences to the Iranian government and people during this difficult moment. However, he urged the Iranian authorities to respond with the utmost restraint. Malaysia aligned itself with the statements issued by concerned countries calling on all parties to step back from further escalation. The Premier added his foremost concern remained the welfare and safety of Malaysians in Iran, the Gulf states and the wider West Asia. He stressed that the government is taking every possible measure to ensure their protection. The government would also urgently evaluate the economic repercussions of the conflict. This includes risks to regional airspace and to freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, Israel expanded its bombing to Lebanon after Tehran-backed group Hezbollah fired rockets at Israel in retaliation for the killing of Iran's supreme leader. An AFP journalist reported hearing several loud explosions in the Lebanese capital. Lebanon's state-run national news agency reports Israeli strikes in multiple areas, including Beirut's southern suburbs. Israel has also issued warnings to residents in around 50 towns and villages in southern and eastern Lebanon, areas where Hezbollah maintains a significant influence. Earlier, Hezbollah claimed responsibility for the rocket and drone barrage on Israel. The group framed its overnight attack, its first of its kind since the 2024 ceasefire, as revenge for Khamenei's death. Iran's news agency ILNA reported on Sunday that the country's former president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, was killed in an airstrike in Tehran. Ahmadinejad, 69, was killed at his home in eastern Tehran along with his bodyguard. During his 8-year term in office from 2005 to 2013, Ahmadinejad was initially the favorite of the ruling Shiite clergy, as well as hardliners and conservatives in parliament. However, towards the end of his term, doubts about his policies grew. His nuclear policy led to numerous sanctions against the country and consequently to an economic crisis. Ahmadinejad came under international criticism primarily for his anti-Semitic remarks. During his presidency, Iran was internationally isolated because of its military threats against Israel and its denial of the Holocaust. His supporters increasingly turned away from him, and even hardliners found him a controversial figure by the end of his term in office. Iran's 3-member Interim Leadership Council has been formed and begun its operations. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian made the announcement hours after Iran confirmed the death of the country's supreme leader Ali Khamenei in US-Israeli strikes on Iran. Pezeshkian said the council will continue Khamenei's path with strength, vowing that Iran's armed forces are ready to smash the bases of the enemies.
امروز شورای موقت رهبری کار خودش رو شروع کرده و به حول قوه خدا با قدرت مسیر امام رو و مسیر رهبر عزیز رو و مسیر تمام حق طلبان دنیا رو با قدرت ادامه خواهیم داد.
Earlier, Secretary of Supreme National Security Council Ali Larijani said, according to Article 111 of Iran's constitution, in case of the country's lack of leadership, its president, judiciary chief and a jurist from the Constitutional Council will temporarily assume the leader's responsibilities. Iran's official news agency then reported that Iran's Expediency Discernment Council has selected Ali Reza Arafi, a jurist from the Constitutional Council, and Judiciary Chief Gholam Hossein Mohseni EJ as a member of the Interim Leadership Council. At least 3 tankers were damaged off the Gulf Coast and 1 seafarer was killed as the Iranian retaliation for US and Israeli strikes exposed ships to collateral damage. It was not immediately clear who launched the projectiles and drones that targeted or damaged ships. A projectile hit the Marshall Islands, killing a crew member on board as the vessel sailed off the coast of Oman. The vessel suffered an explosion and subsequent fire after being struck. A Palau-flagged oil tanker under U.S. sanctions was also hit off Oman's Musandam Peninsula, injuring 4 people. Another tanker in the UAE port of Jebel Ali was almost damaged by falling debris from an aerial interception after Iranian retaliation attacks targeting Gulf states. U.S. President Donald Trump, meanwhile, said that the U.S. destroyed 9 Iranian Navy ships and pummeled Iran's naval headquarters. Risks to commercial shipping have surged over the past 24 hours, with more than 200 vessels dropping anchor around the Strait of Hormuz and surrounding waters. Iran previously said it had closed navigation through the critical waterway. Major container shipping lines have rerouted around the Cape of Good Hope. Gandhi Hospital in the Iranian capital was among the locations affected in the U.S. and Israeli airstrikes. Iranian news agencies reported that several parts of the hospital building suffered damage, while the medics and patients were seen fleeing from the building. The hospital, located in northern Tehran, was hit on the second day of U.S. and Israeli airstrikes on Iran. However, so far, there has been no official confirmation on the number of casualties or the extent of injuries reported. In the airstrikes, several strategic locations around Tehran were also targeted. The U.S. military announced the first American casualties of President Donald Trump's intensifying attacks on Iran, as a new poll showed only 1 in 4 Americans supported strikes against the West Asian country. U.S. aircraft and warships have struck more than 1,000 Iranian targets since Trump ordered the start to major combat operations on Saturday. However, Iran's retaliatory attacks also started taking their toll. The U.S. military said 3 U.S. troops were killed and another 5 were seriously wounded in U.S. operations against Iran. U.S. Central Command said several other U.S. troops suffered minor shrapnel injuries and concussions. Trump sought to brace the U.S. public for more casualties as he acknowledged the deaths and noted that the war could go on for a month. A poll by global leader in market research Ipsos showed 27% of Americans approved of the strikes in the U.S. and Israel, while 43% of the respondents disapproved. Another 29% were not sure. Next, explosions rock Kabul amid Afghanistan-Pakistan clashes. Oil prices soared and stocks fell in Asia on the back of the turmoil in West Asia after U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran, with the vital Strait of Hormuz effectively shut and several ships attacked. In early trade in Asia, Brent crude rocketed to just over $80 per barrel compared to the closing price of $72.87 on Friday, before easing slightly to below $79. On stock markets, Japan's Nikkei was down 2.2% in early trade and Sydney was 0.5% lower. Analyst Amina Bakar said in theory, oil importing countries have reserves, with OECD members required to maintain 90 days worth of oil stocks. However, she noted that prices above $100 cannot be ruled out. She said if the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz continues, the amount of spare capacity in the strategic reserves is not going to fill the gap. Gas prices are also expected to soar as Qatar is a key exporter of liquefied natural gas, heightening inflationary risks. The last time crude prices climbed above $100 was at the start of the war in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, has ordered its stock markets closed on Monday and Tuesday as the country reels from Iran's retaliatory missile and drone strikes in a sign of growing economic disruption sweeping the Gulf. The UAE Capital Markets Authority said that the Abu Dhabi Securities Exchange and Dubai Financial Market would remain shut on 2nd and 3rd of March until further notice, citing its supervisory and regulatory role over the country's capital markets. It said in a statement that the authority will continue to monitor developments in the region and assess the situation on an ongoing basis, taking any further measures as necessary. The closure of the UAE's two exchanges that keeps billions of dollars in listed assets in suspension as investors await clarity on the scale of damage from Saturday and Sunday's strikes, which hit airports, ports and residential areas across the UAE and broader Gulf region. Saudi Arabia's benchmark index fell more than 4% at the open, Oman dropped 3% and Egypt's main index shed 5.44%, while Kuwait suspended trading entirely. Meanwhile, the Embassy of Malaysia in Abu Dhabi will be closed to the public due to the ongoing regional security situation. The embassy said that during this period, in-person consular services will not be available. However, the consular teams remain available via email and telephone to provide advice and assistance. Malaysians requiring further consular assistance may contact the phone number or email address as shown on the screen. At least 23 people were killed across Pakistan as protesters' outrage over the death of Iran's supreme leader took to the streets, with some attempting to storm U.S. diplomatic buildings. In the Pakistani megacity of Karachi, hundreds of pro-Iranian protesters tried to enter the U.S. consulate, prompting clashes with police. The office of the Karachi police surgeon said at least 10 people had died and over 70 were injured. In the northern city of Gilgit, at least 7 people were killed and many more injured in clashes with police. Thousands also gathered in the streets of the capital, Islamabad, with many of them holding photos of late Iranian leader Ali Khamenei. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said the killing of Khamenei was a violation of international law. He stressed that it is an age-old convention that the heads of state or government should not be targeted. He added that the people of Pakistan join the people of Iran in their hour of grief and extend the most sincere condolences on the death of Khamenei. Explosions were heard in the Afghan capital Kabul. A spokesman for Afghanistan's defense ministry said that air defense strikes were carried out against Pakistani aircraft. Months of cross-border clashes have flared again since Thursday when Afghanistan launched an offensive along the frontier with Pakistani forces hitting back on the border and from the skies. The renewed violence came after Afghan residents and officials said troops from both countries had been battling along the border. The fighting came alongside multiple strikes, including on the former U.S. airbase at Bagram. The Afghan government said 3 people were killed overnight in drone strikes and shelling. Pakistan acknowledged bombing key cities on Friday, including Kabul and Kandahar, but has not commented on the latest strikes. Afghan officials claim to have retaliated with strikes on multiple bases in Pakistan that caused significant damage, including in the major city of Rawalpindi. However, there were no immediate Pakistani reports of such attacks. Belgium said its special forces had boarded and seized an oil tanker from the shadow fleet Russia uses to circumvent Western sanctions over the war in Ukraine. The Belgian government said that the vessel was intercepted in the North Sea with aerial support from French military helicopters. Defence Minister Theo Franken said that the tanker was escorted to the port of Zeebrugge after being intercepted in Belgium's exclusive economic zone. Prosecutors identified the ship, which was said to be on its way back to Russia. The prosecutor's office said that the tanker flew the flag of Guinea, but an onboard inspection confirmed suspicions that it was sailing under a false flag. Authorities have opened a criminal investigation. A spokeswoman for the Federal Prosecutor's Office said that the ship captain, a Russian national, is being questioned by investigators. French President Emmanuel Macron confirmed that his country's naval forces assisted in the operation, calling it a major blow to Russia's so-called shadow fleet. The Belgian Defence Ministry said that the seized tanker was on the European Union's sanctions list. The EU has blacklisted hundreds of vessels in a bid to sap Moscow's war chest. The man suspected of fatally shooting at least 2 people and injuring 14 others at a bar in Austin, Texas, had a history of mental health issues. The FBI is looking into a possible terrorism link. The shooter was identified as Indiaga Diagne, a 53-year-old naturalized U.S. citizen from Senegal. The FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force is working with the Austin Police Department on the investigation, which includes staff from the federal agency's evidence response and digital forensics teams. Austin Police Chief Lisa Davis said that the gunman first opened fire with a pistol from his car on patrons of Buford's Backyard Beer Garden in downtown Austin. He then parked his car and emerged with a rifle and began shooting at people who were walking by. Davis said that the assailant was shot and killed by police who responded to the shooting.
As the officers were responding, again, our suspect was coming toward East 6th Street. Officers were coming toward him, and at the intersection, he was shot and he was killed.
The incident marked the 56th U.S. mass shooting this year and the one with the most victims so far. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has called for dialogue with North Korea to resume after Pyongyang last week shunned the prospect of diplomacy with its neighbor. Since taking office in June last year, a dovish Lee has sought to mend ties with the nuclear-armed North.
북측과의 대화 재개 노력도 계속해 나가겠습니다. 페이스메이커로서 북미 간의 대화가 조속히 재개될 수 있도록 미국은 물론 주변국과 충실하게 소통하겠습니다. 남북 간의 실질적인 긴장 완화와 유관국 협력을 통해 정전 체제를 평화 체제로 전환해 나갈 수 있도록 모든 노력을 다할 것입니다.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, during a party meeting last week, dashed hopes of a diplomatic thaw with Seoul, describing its overtures as deceptive farce and a poor work. Kim said North Korea has absolutely no business dealing with South Korea and will permanently exclude South Korea from the category of compatriots. Coming up in sports, Speedy Tigers recover from early scare to dominate Austria 6-1. Stay tuned.
Di gelanggang ini, tiada ruang untuk kesilapan. Lebih seabad sejarah tercipta, penuh dan air mata menjadi saksi. Ini bukan sekadar kejuaraan, ini adalah takhta keagungan. Rasai debarannya. Saksikan pertarungan demi maruah dari 3 hingga 8 Mac 2026 di saluran OK, Sukan RTM dan penstriman langsung di RTM Free. Kejohanan Badminton All England 2026 hanya di RTM.
Let's kick off our sports segment with the English Premier League. Arsenal remain comfortable at the top of the table. The Gunners maintained a 5-point lead after defeating Chelsea 2-1 at the Emirates Stadium early this morning. The home side opened the scoring through William Saliba in the 21st minute. However, Liam Rosenor's squad equalised through Piero Hincapi in first half stoppage time. In the second half, both teams increased the pressure before a powerful header from Urian Timber found the back of the visitors' net. Chelsea suffered a major setback when Pedro Neto was shown a red card in the 70th minute, making it difficult for the Blues to control the game. The defeat leaves Chelsea 3 points outside the top 5, hurting their chances of qualifying for next season's Champions League. Arsenal, meanwhile, strengthened their confidence ahead of their clash with Manchester City next month. In another match, Manchester United climbed to third place after beating Crystal Palace 2-1. Now, the Speedy Tigers began their 2026 Hockey World Cup qualifiers campaign on the right note after thrashing Austria 6-1 in their opening Group B match in Ismailia, Egypt yesterday. The national team was stunned early on when Austria took the lead through a penalty stroke converted by Filip Losonski as early as the 3rd minute. Shaken by the goal, Sarjit Singh's men regrouped and pushed forward, equalising in the 24th minute through a field goal by Mohammad Azrai Aizat Abu Kamal. Just seconds later, Shelo Silverius added the second goal also from open play to put Malaysia before the end of the first half. In the second half, the Speedy Tigers continued their attacking momentum and strengthened their lead through a penalty corner converted by Nur Shafiq Sumantri in the 34th minute. Azrai once again stole the spotlight when he scored his second personal goal in the 44th minute before Mohammad Akimullah Anwar Isuk added another field goal in the 52nd minute, followed by a penalty corner strike from Marhan Jalil in the 57th minute to seal an emphatic victory. The national squad is scheduled to face Pakistan in their second Group B match today at 7 p.m. Malaysian time, which is expected to be a tougher test for the Speedy Tigers. And with that, we've reached the end of our bulletin today. Do join us again tonight at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 or Saluran Berita RTM. Alternatively, you can stream us live on RTM Click's website and mobile app. Till then, I'm Mona Priya. Thank you for your company.